Are there any conditions under which you would support Jim Durkin, leader of the State House for the Republicans, any conditions under which you would support an increase in the state income tax rate from 3.75%?
I think that
something higher. Would you do it?
I can't speak to that right now. I want to see some good faith on the reforms.
You might if there was a good faith effort on reforms.
All I say is that if they want revenue, they need to get reforms passed first. I'm always going to keep an open mind to any proposal from the Democrats.
You're open.
But the fact is, all I'm saying is that I want to see reforms first. The governor wants to see reforms because the Democrats, we know what they want. They want a tax increase with no strings attached. We did that 4.5 years. Yeah. They did that 4.5 years ago. It didn't work.
This
it was
time
a
you
failure.
want some strings. We have Jim Durkin here. He's the House Republican leader. He was a state rep for 15 years because, what was it, like 7 years, and then you had a few years off for good behavior as your brother, one of your many brothers, federal judge Tom Durkin might say, you know, in one of his sentences, we give people a few years off for good behavior. And then he had to come back and serve the rest of his sentence. And that was 15 years as a state rep, essentially.
Sometimes Catholics refer to that as penance.
He's doing penance.
In light of the fact that we did have the papal visit. So I'll equate that to this show.
All right. And so now, no fooling around, folks. Come back with more about Jim Durkin as we get into the show. But he is a major player in the state impasse. The state of Illinois usually passes a budget around the middle of the year. So fiscal 2016 started on July 1, right, Jim?
Yes, correct.
And lo and behold, there wasn't a budget. The Democrats passed a budget, to be fair, and the governor vetoed it, right?
As he should have, as I would have if I was governor. Yeah.
Why? I mean, if they passed a budget, that's good enough. Why didn't the governor, you know, it means the state Senate and the state House said it was okay, right? And so they're good. You're part of the General Assembly.
Correct.
For people who don't follow this too much, they're wondering, why would the governor, who's newly elected, just came in January, you know, 5 or 6 months before the passage of this budget, just go along, sign the damn thing. No, he vetoes it. And then you're saying, well, everybody says the Republicans and the Democrats, the Democrats have a veto-proof majority in the State House and the State Senate, so surely they could just override the veto, and therefore it wouldn't matter, then he's vetoed it. So what went wrong with what I just named, what I just said, Jim?
Well, I think that a majority of the Democrats were very nervous about what exactly they passed. Now, there is a constitutional requirement that the legislature is to pass a balanced budget, meaning that revenues will match spending. There also is a requirement that the legislature must determine what the revenue number or revenue estimate is for the state of Illinois for the upcoming fiscal year. One, they never did that. They never passed a resolution which would indicate what we believe the revenue estimate would be for this FY16.
They never passed a resolution?
No. We did my first year as Republican leader. We passed a resolution. It was agreed upon between the Speaker, myself, and it passed unanimously in the House of Representatives. That was in the fiscal year 15 budget.
Right.
So they did not pass a resolution on a revenue estimate. And then they passed a budget which was $4 billion. $4 billion out of balance.
So
$4
give
billion
people an idea,
more.
roughly, what was the general revenue, the GRF, in terms of spending for fiscal 2016 in that budget? Roughly, ballpark.
Approximately between $32 and $33 billion.
32.
$37 billion worth of spending in their plan.
$37 billion of spending in the General Revenue Fund budget in the Democrats' plan, and about $33 billion in terms of revenue?
Of revenue, which we, I think everyone, since we're not working off a binding or a legal resolution, a lawful resolution on what the revenue estimate would be, but we do know from within our different Bureau of the Budget and also COGFA that we're looking at $32 to $33 billion that will be coming in to the state of Illinois Treasury this upcoming year. About that. Yes. But really, it's unfortunate that the Democrats have allowed that situation to occur. They knew there was a crisis, and they did nothing to assist, to help us move the ball forward. It was Republicans who did the heavy lifting in the House and the Senate this past spring to solve the FY15 budget.
So you got 72 votes to make that, to the correction, to make the balanced budget. 72 votes in the
72
State House,
There were 20,
and there are 26
Democrats, 46 all Republicans. One was absent. All Republicans voted.
Because you only have 47 Republicans. People now realize the margins in the State House, the Illinois State House, 71 Democrats to 47 Republicans. And what Jim is telling you, Representative Durkin is telling you, for that fiscal 2015, which was a $1.5 billion out of balance when the governor came in, you balanced it, but you got 46 of the 47 Republicans to support that.
It would have been 47, but for the fact that someone was absent.
Was absent, and you only got 26 of the 71 Democrats to support that.
I think that's
roughly
exactly,
that. Yeah.
And I think it's really unfortunate. Again, the Democrats who turned their back on.
Mostly was mostly that sort of poaching on the funds that you're saying wasn't that vital. Mostly that $1.5 billion was taking, they call it a sweeping of the funds. They swept the money out of those funds into general revenue spending. Is that right?
Correct.
Was it mostly was there any? Did the fix come from anywhere else that Democrats didn't want to be associated with?
No,
or
it was
just
mainly,
the funds?
it was mainly from
sweeping the funds.
Sweeping of funds, and
okay.
you know,
Well, anyway,
these are all funds that will replenish. You know, the fact is, we got it done.
You got it done. So what's the problem? Because you know, Senate President Cullerton told me just a few days ago. You can find this on ChicagoNow.com. ChicagoNow.com/public affairs, and I asked, because the governor told me about a month ago in a press conference when I said people perceive there's like zero progress. What's going on here? And he said, no, that's a little bit wrong. He said, I wouldn't say zero progress. We're making some progress. We're having discussions, and then Cullerton came out and said, what discussions? We're not having any meetings. Madigan said, what discussions? So they can't even agree on whether they're meeting. So I ask you, Jim Durkin, Representative Durkin, Leader Durkin, are currently, as of September 28th, are the Democrats and the Republican leaders and the governor meeting to work this out?
Last time we met was at the end of May. There have been
the end of May.
End of May. There has been requests made by the governor
4 months almost.
Most recently within the last week and a half from the governor to the 4 legislative leaders to meet to discuss the budget.
Okay.
Senator Radonio and myself both agreed. Democrat leaders, both Senator Cullerton and President Cullerton and Speaker Madigan, both declined.
Wait a second. No. That can't be, because it was just a few days ago I saw the Senate President John Cullerton at the City Club, and he said it's the governor's job to call the meetings. He's not calling the meetings. And you're telling me that wasn't quite accurate, because you're saying he declined when he was telling me the governor's not calling a meeting?
It's from the governor's office that the governor stated.
Well, how long ago did the governor try to set up his meeting?
About a week and a half ago was the
So that was before. That was before I saw, because this was at a City Club function of just about less than a week ago. City Club of Chicago.
Since the beginning of June, myself and Senator Radonio and the governor have been willing to sit down with the Democrat leadership to discuss the budget. As of within the last week and a half, there was a request made. It was rebuffed by the Democrat leadership.
Did they give any reason why they wouldn't sit down? They just said no?
No. I'm not aware that that was...
So why didn't you guys hold a press conference with the governor and say, we're here, we're ready to meet, and the Democrats aren't? Why are you letting them sort of cover this up?
You know what, I think like a lot of the things that are going down in Springfield right now, a lot of the theatrics that have been occurring, we're not going to get involved with them and play at that in that level. I don't think it's productive about pointing fingers, but the fact of the matter is we can sit down, we can discuss where we're at and how we can get out of this.
So what would you do? If they did agree to sit down, what would your strategy be? You can tell us, nobody's listening. Just tell me, what would be your strategy, you and Chris Radonio and the governor? What would you most like the Democrats to agree to of the turnaround agenda?
I want them to get off this notion that the turnaround agenda items are not related to the budget, and they are. And they need to be able to start showing some good faith on matters that are very important for the governor, and I think also for the business community. They should not be surprised at all at what the governor has asked for. This is what he campaigned on. This is what he talked about about workmen's compensation.
So make the case.
Reform.
Make the case. Tell us of the most important things that you think do relate to the budget, in your view, that he wants for the turnaround agenda.
Look, I think that, I think the one way I look at it, reform to our workmen's compensation system. and setting up a definition, a reasonable and a fair causation standard is important, because right now it's very difficult. I think you just need to prove that 1% of the injury was in the workplace. They're looking for a 50% responsibility of the injury was done at the workplace. I think that's responsible. That's what other states do. But as I've traveled the state,
explain what that means.
It means that the job really must be related to the workplace.
The injury that happened.
I'm sorry, not the job. The injury
must be. What does the 50% mean?
50% that they can show that that a good portion of the injury
relates to the workplace.
Yes.
It wasn't like 10% was related to 50% or more.
Current law, I think, is 1%. It just needs to show that 1% of
1%.
Yeah. So that's the problem that you have.
Yeah. So you got to fix that.
You got to fix that.
That's called the causation issue.
Causation issue.
Because Phil Corboy, do you know Phil?
Know him well.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He is.
He sat where you're sitting just a week or two ago, and he said, I said this causation issue, and he says, there's no problem. I said, well, my understanding is, Phil, somebody could have he hurt his back playing Frisbee on Sunday with his kid, Monday walk in and say he injured himself, and he would get compensated. He said, no, he'd be laughed out of the hearing. Who got that right? Now, Phil said he's a workman's comp. You're not a workman's comp.
No, I'm not.
So do you think Phil got that right?
I can't say that, but I'm listening to the employers. I've traveled the state.
What do the employers say?
The employers are like, you need to be able to set a reasonable and a fair and responsible causation standard.
See, because they're saying
need to show that at least 50% of the injury was done, what happened and occurred at the workplace.
And that's not the case now.
No.
So maybe that Frisbee thing might work because you don't require, maybe that's the 1%.
Look, it's the weekend softball guys who pull a hamstring and all of a sudden show up at work, and we know what happens. But that is extremely important. That comes from the mouth of Caterpillar and major manufacturers through the state of Illinois, and that causes the rates for compensation, work compensation rates, to be extremely high. And if I heard it from one, I've heard it from a number of individuals, employers, great employers in the state of Illinois, is that because of the workman's compensation system, what I have to pay in work comp, I'm reluctant to open up a new line of manufacturing in the state of Illinois. And this is coming from Doug Overhell.
Is that reduced to a bill that's being sponsored by a Republican, and so it's in the House? So the Speaker and the Senate President can't say, oh, they're talking about something that they don't even put forth.
They shot it down in the Senate. And so we're willing to negotiate.
So it's in there as a bill.
There's a bill
it was introduced in the Senate, but it's being shut down. It can't even be brought up for a vote?
No, they're not going to move any of the governor's turnaround agenda items. They don't like it. They don't want to be.
So that's one. Now you're saying you think Cullerton and Madigan ought to be able to support the workman's comp reform you just articulated.
I think they should. And you know what?
You don't know if they will, but you think they should.
I think they should, of course.
Okay, I mean, this is what next does he want?
What good is Illinois? How do you, when we have unemployment still at high levels, you need to be able to encourage and keep businesses in the state of Illinois. That's how you grow the economy, by making it a better business climate, which is what Illinois has not been for a number of years.
So what else does he want other than the workman's comp reform you just mentioned?
Redistricting
Governor
reform.
Rauner, what does he want?
Redistricting reform.
What does that mean, Jim?
Well, I think he'd like to take the hands out of the legislators, or basically the people who run the chambers, who redraw the legislative districts every 10 years, and also the congressional districts. And it's that's how you keep the supermajorities.
How does he want it to be drawn?
He wants to place it in the hand of an independent commission, as we do in other states.
Not appointed by the governor, not appointed by the legislative leaders.
An independent commission, as you have in Iowa and I believe a few other states.
Maybe even computer-driven, right? That would be sort of independent.
I support that.
Yeah.
He would like to see that. He also would like.
Wait a second. Does he expect Cullerton and Speaker Madigan, Senate President Cullerton, to guarantee they will put votes on this, or does he just want to have them bring it up for a vote in the State House and State Senate to put it on the ballot?
I believe the governor said he wants a vote.
Wants a vote?
Wants a vote.
They don't have to put votes on it. They just agree to put it up for a vote.
My guess is that if it is placed up on the board for a vote, that it would be successful. And I think that is the fear that the Democrat leadership has on trying about putting them, actually having a vote on this.
Well, you think Cullerton and Madigan will agree to put it up for a vote?
Today, as you and I are sitting, no.
Keep going. What else does the governor want?
Term limits is another thing the governor feels very strong about.
Which means?
Tort reform is, term limits is just that he's looking for 10 years, a combination of the House and the Senate. So it would have to be a constitutional, you have to change the Constitution for that. And also 2 terms for constitutional officers.
So people under his schematic could serve in the State House and the State Senate for a total of 10 years.
That's correct.
Then they have to get out.
That's correct.
And they could be governor for 2 terms, then they have to get out. They could be attorney general for 2 terms. They couldn't be like Jesse White, who's been Secretary of State for the last 200 years. Well, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit. But what is it, five or six? I know. But nothing against Jesse, but he's been there 5 or 6 terms, right?
He has been. Yeah.
2 terms.
Well, I think if you look at Illinois overall.
Okay. Keep going. We're going to run out of time.
Tort reform.
So you need tort reform.
Yes.
We covered that a lot with Phil. We covered that a lot with Todd Maish. Coming up.
Venue shopping, joint and several liability changes, property tax relief that has.
Okay, so you got to make the state lawsuit friendly. Businesses will come here not afraid of the, being what Madison County is doing with Cook County. They're going to be treated fairly if they get sued in the state court. So that's by tort reform. What else does he want?
We have property tax relief is very important for the governor too.
Now Cullerton has a bill. He said, now what's wrong with his bill?
Well, the fact is they are not, I don't believe they're open for a property tax freeze. Has some type of reform in it that also goes further, that allows for certain collective bargaining issues at the local level be left up to the locals, or whether or not they want to opt in or opt out of some of these local collective bargaining matters, which is basically prevailing wage.
So that would allow the people who make that argument you made.
It would be
that would allow them to the local governments could lower their costs, so therefore they could get by with a ceiling on real estate property taxes. Well, is that why they have? Is that why the two go together?
That's a trade-off, and also there would be. A component of that also would be, and the governor has stated that he would also look into unfunded mandates. And we say that all the time, but there's a group that's looking into what are the true unfunded mandates. The Municipal League and schools have told us about, if we're going to have property tax frozen, we need help on the other side.
So under the schematic that you've outlined, if the city of Decatur said, their local government said, we don't want our civil service and our Decatur employees, Decatur government employees. We don't want to bargain on salary. We don't want to bargain on pension. It's going to be like civil service used to be. If you work here, you get this salary, you get this benefit, or you choose to work somewhere else. And we're going to do that. But the state has to change the law. You guys have to change the law to allow Rockford, to allow Decatur, to allow to opt out of these things. You guys got to do that. And that means that Cullerton and Madigan, with these so-called veto-proof majorities, would have to support that, right? What are the chances of that happening, given that labor is totally against it? Now do you see, not you, now do people see why we're at an impasse? How do you resolve that?
Well, I tell you what, we'll be at an impasse for a long time if that's going to, if this is what their response is going to be, which it has been for the last 4 months. Now.
So do they think they're winning?
Here's the thing. They want to go back to the way they've ran state government over the past 12 years, which they had plenary authority over the state of Illinois. They were able to, from the governor's mansion to the houses, to do whatever they want. They don't like the fact that you have a very strong, determined governor who's not willing to blink. And I support Governor Rauner, support what he's trying to do, but the budgeting and spending practices of the past have come to an end. We have been able to, in the House, the governor has vetoed a lot of bad bills, and there's been, I think, 64 or 65 attempts to override the governor, which
the House
failed. Republicans have been able to hold.
Only one succeeded.
Only one was the heroin bill. Yeah.
So in your view, that shows his support even among Democrats, because they're not willing to vote. At least certain Democrats are not willing to vote for an override of the governor. Is that your point?
Well, I think that some Democrats are, they look at Governor Rauner and
are they afraid? Because people have told me, tell me it's a right, that the Democrats have this margin, 71 Democrats to 47 Republicans. But I'm told, I think in like 20 of those House seats, Governor Rauner won that when he ran for governor.
I'm not sure if they're afraid, but they...
Does that number sound right to you? 20 of those 71 Democratic House seats, Governor Rauner won?
That's accurate, correct.
And about 10 of the Senate, and 10 of their 39 Democratic Senate-held seats.
I think that's pretty close.
He won as well?
Yeah.
So are those people a little bit afraid to vote against the governor?
Well, I'm not sure if it's afraid, but I will say this, that they certainly respect this governor. And I think that they're worried about crossing this governor. And all of a sudden,
why do they respect him?
He's
what does
a very
that mean?
successful.
What does that mean when a politician, Jim? You are a politician. That's a bad word for some people, but you're also. We should say he's also basically a full-time lawyer. At least they think that at Arnstein and Lehr, right? Where he's got a full private sector practice. So, but you are a politician. You've been in the role of that for 15 years. What does it mean when you say they respect the governor?
Well, I think that they want to work with this governor, and but if you do continue to go on the opposite side of the governor, the governor's going to get active in races, and he's made it very clear that the governor and the state party will get active in races. There'll be more.
Oh, he might challenge some of those Democrats.
No secret. No secret at all.
Either get a strong Republican, or maybe he could even get a Democrat that they'd support in the primary.
Whispers are going on about that. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that, but we have a governor who's made it his passion to change Illinois and to do everything within his power to help Republicans in the House and Senate win seats, take Democrats out of this supermajority. Now, mind you, that this supermajority hasn't been working out as well as they had hoped. I mean, perfect example was the AFSCME bill from a few weeks ago.
Yeah, when you say they have helped, when you say it hasn't worked out as well as they had hoped,
they lost all their
Democrats.
Democrats, yeah.
This was they lost. That was an important bill.
They
couldn't override the veto on that.
They couldn't.
Why was that important?
Why it was important because what that bill would have done, it would have taken the administration, the governor, out of what I believe is his inherent executive authority to negotiate a public union contract on behalf of Illinoisans and taxpayers throughout the state of Illinois, and leaving it to
how did it take it away from it?
What it did is that the current law leaves it between both the bargaining group, which is the AFSCME and the governor.
Yeah.
Right now, if under the law they passed, it would have gone to a mediator. If there's
an impasse for a certain amount of time, like 90 days,
it goes to a mediator for 30 days, and then it goes to a arbitrator is one selected by the governor, one by the union. If they can't come up with agreement, then there is a person that is selected by the Labor Relations Board out of a pool of 53 individuals who are arbitrators. Each one of them was certified and recommended from under Governor Blagojevich and also Governor Quinn.
So that's a pretty bad pool for Republicans.
No, I mean, it is, but the thing is, you're allowing this person to be the king who's going to make a decision.
Substituting for the governor.
Yeah, who's going to, in interest arbitration, it means that he's not going to sit there and he's going to negotiate and find and play Solomon. He's going to decide between one side or the other, but we're leaving that with a non-elected individual.
Who was the guy? So that was not overridden because there was one Democrat who didn't come back for the vote. Do you remember who that was in the State House?
Yes.
Who was that?
It's Representative Ken Duncan.
A friend of public affairs. And he's a Democrat, didn't come back, so they couldn't override. Do you think, in a sense, not really in an improper sense, the governor and the Republican Party got to Ken Duncan?
I can't say that.
Well,
all I know is that Representative Duncan indicated that he would be out of town during that week. And I have no reason to believe anything other than that. We saw text messages.
It wouldn't be terrible if Republicans worked with Democrats to achieve something good. They're playing the political game that's necessary to enact good public policy.
That's what we're going to get out of this mess, out of this impasse.
Yeah, how are you going to get out?
The Democrats are going to work with us.
That's what you need. You need some Democrats to cross the lines. It's like crossing a picket line. They need to cross the Mike Madigan
it's going to be more
political
than that,
line.
because it's still the Speaker and the President control what bills are going to be called. They have ultimate control over that.
Yeah.
So we need the President and the Speaker to meet with the Governor, myself, and the Senate leader to start going through this and being realistic about what we need to do to accomplish this. Otherwise, we're going to be here for a while.
What could persuade them? What's the leverage you need? Because you're thinking right now, Cullerton and Madigan think they're winning this politically, so they don't want to meet.
I'm not so sure if they believe that they're winning this.
Why wouldn't they meet otherwise then?
Well, I think that there's a public sentiment out there that supports the governor. I think a majority of the
You think you're winning? The governor's
winning? I'm not sure if they're
winning.
What
about when we hear about these autistic kids that don't have access to these programs, these moms who've started working, low income, and they're not getting their child care?
Well, where were these guys 4 months ago? We were looking to help solve child care. This is a disingenuous group of individuals.
This is now.
They're great at blaming people for the fault that they've had over the past 12 years. And you know what? I can take the heat. And I'm glad to take the heat if people say that state government is a failure and that they're not accomplishing their goal. The fact is, the people who put this state government are the ones who are running both these chambers. They're the ones who run this state in the ground over the last 12 years. 4.5 years ago.
Those are the Democrats, you're saying?
Yes, the Democrats who've run the state in the ground for the past 12 years.
They had the State House, they had the State Senate.
They had everything.
For the last 12 years, they had the governor's chair.
Yes.
They have the state Supreme Court.
They passed a tax increase.
It's a blue state.
It's a blue state. They passed a tax increase over 4 years ago, and they said that we're going to be able to, we will solve the problems of the state, we'll put people back to work, we'll pay our bills, and we'll solve all the structural reforms that we have, problems we have with our structural problems we have in the state of Illinois. All they did was make a pension payment with that.
They say they need more money. Are there any conditions under which you would support Jim Durkin, leader of the State House for the Republicans, any conditions under which you would support an increase in the state income tax rate from 3.75%?
I think that
something higher. Would you do it?
I can't speak to that right now. I want to see some good faith on the reforms.
You might if there was a good faith effort on reforms.
All I say is that if they want revenue, they need to get reforms passed first. I'm always going to keep an open mind to any proposal from the Democrats.
You're open.
But the fact is, all I'm saying is that I want to see reforms first. Governor wants to see reforms because the Democrats, we know what they want. They want a tax increase with no strings attached. We did that 4.5 years. Yeah. They did that 4.5 years ago. It didn't work.
This
it was
time
a
you
failure.
want some strings. Well, we're going to have to get out. We're going to have to close out. Let me close on this. You've mentioned a lot of reforms.
Yes.
If you had to narrow it to the top two, what would the top two be for you to start thinking about an increase in revenue that the Democrats want? Possibly an increase in the income tax rate.
Well,
what would be the top roof? Let's prioritize.
Look, just to get past go, it's got to be work comp reform and also property tax relief, realistic property tax
as
relief.
Amended, as we discussed here, not just the cap, but that collective bargaining kind of reduction of public sector union control, right?
The governor is insisting upon that.
He's insisting. And if you got that, if you got workman's comp reform, if you got the property tax freeze as we've articulated here, would he then give on more revenue, extend the sales tax to cover services, extend the increase the income tax rate maybe to 4.5? Would he do that?
I can't say that.
Would you do that? As a leader of the Republican House,
well, I can't say that right now, and I'm not going to make that statement right now, but the fact is, if they even want to bring up the subject of revenue, they've got to do something to change the status quo in Illinois. That is why Governor Rauner was elected. And if anybody thinks that we're doing well in this state, that we have a great business climate, and that we are, families are doing great, and we've stopped the out-migration, the migration out of the state of families and businesses.
Have we stopped that?
No, we haven't. We haven't.
The last 15 years, the state of Illinois has lost how many people? 1.5 million? How many businesses?
Well, I don't know. I read about them every week. I get a little note.
So you got to stop that. Well, you got to stop the hemorrhaging of blood and people.
Well, we have to, and I'll give you an example. When what I felt was really said it all was last year when I was working with Leslie Munger, who's our state comptroller. She was running for the state house, and she told me why she was running. Her son graduated from the University of Illinois with an engineering degree, one of the best schools in the world for engineering. Couldn't find a job in the state of Illinois. Had to go to Texas to find a job. So what does that tell you? I mean, we got, I'm a father. I want our kids to get a great education here, but I also want them to be employed here. I never had to do that, Jeff, when I left school. I mean, I went to law school, but I could find a law job. Things have changed. People are leaving the state to find employment, our surrounding states, or whether it's Texas, Florida, other states that are much more competitive than we are business-wise.
Okay, 30 seconds and then we're out. What would you tell Speaker Mike Madigan if you were sitting right here? What would you tell Speaker Mike Madigan is necessary to be done to deal with the budget?
Let's get back to the table. Let's get back to the table and we need to be able to find some type of solution to workman's compensation and also to the property tax issues that the governor is emphasizing. It's really important. And I think that if we can have that discussion, we can start working our way towards a fair, balanced budget.
Would you tell the same thing to Senate President Cullerton?
Of course.
Would Senate Republican leader Chris Redonio be with you on what you just said?
Yes, she would.
Would Governor Rauner be with you on what you just said?
Yes, he would.
All right. You've heard it here, folks. Yeah. You got a deal. You just have to see if Senate President Cullerton, Speaker Mike Madigan support it. We hope they'll come on soon on Public Affairs to let us know. And you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs, and you can find out not just what Representative and Republican House Leader Jim Durkin thinks. No, you might not just what Chris Redonio thinks, Senate Republican leader, not just what Governor Rauner thinks. We're hoping you're going to find out what Senate President John Cullerton thinks, what Speaker of the Illinois House Mike Madigan thinks. You come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.